We all are gonna die. 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 Why don't we help each other prepare for it? Without death there could not be life. I'm talking about end of life conversations, conversations about the end of life. Death and dying, grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
And the next morning, I opened my computer and there was an article about death doulas, which I had never heard of before. I had no idea what a death doula was. And I was just blown away when I read this article and sort of completely inspired and said to myself, this is it. Like, I can't believe it, but this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And I signed up for an ELDA that very day.
Welcome to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I'm Reverend Wakil David Matthews.
And I'm the Reverend Mother, Ana Luisa Armendariz. In this podcast, we share people's experiences with death and dying, grief and loss, and the end of life.
We really enjoy all of our excellent and insightful guests. They generously tell their stories with compassion and wisdom. We also want to thank Wakil and Wendy's children and partners for that wonderful introductory song. Okay, let's get started.
Today we are speaking with Karen Carlisi. Karen comes to us from doula work following 40 years as an English language educator, cross-cultural trainer, textbook author, writing coach, and meditation coach. She has taught and traveled around the world, especially in Poland, Japan, Italy, and Korea. She spent 4 years in meditating training with Shambhala, a secular meditation path created in the Vajrayana Buddhist lineage, where she was also trained as a meditation instructor. She has studied and embraced multiple spiritual and cultural traditions and is prepared to honor the practices and rituals of those she serves.
Yeah, I'll have to ask you how to pronounce Vajrayana sometime.
Oh, yeah. Is that, did I say, how bad was I? Vajrayana.
Okay.
It was close enough.
Yes.
Okay.
So we also want to note that Karen completed her doula training with INELDA, which is the International End-of-Life Doula Association, in 2020, and has been actively participating as a death doula since November of 2023. She is a founding member of Pacific Death Doula Collaborative, a collective of death doulas sharing resources, education, and services. As a member of Threshold Choir, which we love and have interviewed before,
Yes.
she provides comfort singing to the terminally ill and dying. As a published author and writing coach, she also specializes in memoir writing for those who are consciously nearing their closing chapters with a desire to tell their stories. Outside of her doula work, she enjoys hiking and swimming, time with her family, gardening, travel, and learning languages. Wonderful.
Welcome.
Yeah, so good to have you.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, it sounds like a good list of activities.
Yes, I've had a full life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to learn Spanish so I could speak with Ana Luisa better.
Yes.
I'm working on my Spanish right now because I have a client who needs me for that. Although before that, I've just done a lot of Italian. I spent a lot of time in Italy, and I have a heart connection to Italy. So my Italian has been sort of first and foremost recently, but now I'm into my Spanish again.
Spanish club.
Yeah. There are some similarities I've noticed, but
oh yeah.
Anyway, we like to start out by asking this question about when you first became aware of death.
Yeah, well, I had a few experiences that kind of led to my real awareness. First, when I was 7 years old, I was in a Catholic tradition, practicing for communion, had religious instruction. And there was this wonderful priest, Father Maloney, who I just loved. He was kind of a father figure. And when he died, they had a wake because it was Catholic tradition. And it was the first time I actually saw a dead body. And I remember standing at the side of the casket, and I was just tall enough probably to look in and see the body. And I just remember being very sort of mystified at, well, that's Father Maloney, but he's not really there, but his body is here. And I just kind of wonder, like, what really happens there. So it was kind of my first questioning, and kind of the mystery was there for me. And then when I was 16, I was working at my very first job at a senior facility, and I was sort of aware of the end of life in that job, because the people were in their 80s and 90s, and I would be giving them showers and walking with them up and down the hallways. They would tell me their stories. Some of them had dementia, and they would repeat stories, and I would just be there for them, listening and asking questions and really holding space. So it was a feeling that it was a sense of gratitude, sort of, for having had the opportunity to share in these moments with them that might be their final moments. Some of them died while I was there. But the most intense awareness came really when my grandmother died. She was very dear to me. My grandparents were Italian, Sicilian, and she was a musician. She played piano, and I used to sit next to her on the piano and sing with her and watch her hands. She played by ear, and her hands would sort of bounce up and down on the left-hand side. And she really taught me the lesson of unconditional love. And when my grandfather died, she was 89. They had been together for 67 years.
Wow.
So, and she was already experiencing a little bit of dementia and health problems. She was declining herself. And I could sense that she was going to get lost. So I really just instinctually started companioning her and ushering her. And I would drive down from Los Angeles, where I lived, to San Diego, where she was, and take her out to lunch. And we would sit, and I would just ask her questions about the past and all the family history that I knew, but also helping her to come to terms with some things that were a little difficult, and just reflecting. And then I would start asking her if she had had dreams, and asking her about my grandfather. And she became more and more conscious along the way, which was just this beautiful, amazing journey. And at the end, she was in hospice. And the night before she died, the whole family was there. And because we were told this is getting close to the end, we had pizza. We were playing her music in the room, and it was just this beautiful farewell. And then the next morning, I was standing by the bedside when she was in the final moments, and just caressing her and singing to her and soothing her, and knowing, even though she was unconscious, that she was hearing me and feeling me. And when she died, in the moment of her death, her energy just arose from her body, and I felt it, like, in the room, in the space where I was standing, just intensely. And then I felt it just dissolve and disappear. And it was just really, that was my real awareness of what death is and how it works. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can certainly feel and empathize, or I don't know, that just really touches me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Well, it's beautiful, and you are so aware of that companioning piece, that you were sensitive to those moments, including when she left her body. And I think that's a gift. That's such a huge gift.
It was an amazing gift that stayed with me, and really is part of my story, obviously.
Well, and you had these really natural and beautiful interactions with death as a young person, and then your grandmother later. But how has death impacted the story of who you are today now?
Well, I had a very big career. You read some of my history, and I retired in 2018. And it was like a death for me, because I identified with my personhood as, who I was in my work life. It was really my life. So it was really a period of grieving. And I felt like I was sitting here saying, I was like looking at death, basically. So I kind of went through that period of loss and grief, and then I picked myself up and said, yeah, this has got to stop. I got to like live my life. And I started exploring and just explored different things. And I learned more Italian and, studied language and traveled. And my husband and I went in 2020, the end of February of 2020.
Mhm.
We left the United States for Italy for a 6-week extended stay in Puglia, Italy, Lecce, the capital of Puglia.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
got there and the numbers were rising as we went through our first 2 weeks. And on March 9th, all of Italy locked down. And we were locked down in an apartment. We could not leave the apartment except to go to the pharmacy or the grocery store, which is right below our apartment. So we could see like how long the line was. People were waiting and taking tickets. We heard the ambulances coming regularly, back and forth. Lecce, Italy itself, as you know, from the history of the pandemic, has a very large demographic of seniors, and Lecce itself is full of seniors. So we were just surrounded by death and the awareness of death. And my husband was very fragile and we were terrified. And like everybody during the pandemic, my consciousness and awareness of sort of this collective consciousness of death really intensified. And I came back. And then in 2020, it was actually 2021, I think. It was New Year's Eve of 2000, going into 2021. As I do every year for New Year's Eve, I just sort of sit and I reflect on the past year and I open my heart and I say, what is coming? I'm open. And this year particularly, I was really focused on who am I and what is my purpose in life and where am I going? And I really am ready now to receive whatever it is that I need to know and do so that I can be living fully because I'm not dead yet. And the next morning I opened my computer and there was an article about death doulas, which I had never heard of before. I had no idea what a death doula was. And I was just blown away when I read this article and sort of completely inspired and said to myself, this is it. Like, I can't believe it, but this is it. Like, I was just, it was a calling, an inspiration. And I just felt like this is what I'm going to do. And I signed up for Inelda that very day for training.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a supreme cup of death and that has impacted this story. Like,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that sense of just sitting down and opening your heart and waiting. I mean,
and knowing.
Opening up to that. We all can use that. We can all use that. That's a good clue for everybody. For whatever method you might use to open your heart. But wow, what a great story. Thank you. Well, why don't you tell us a little more about what you're doing now, your current role, your current work?
So I am a death doula, or what is called an end-of-life doula. I work with clients who are in the death space in some way. They could be, just having received a terminal diagnosis and are conscious of their need to prepare and plan and sort of emotionally and psychologically prepare. So I walk with them through that process and the journey. And I can also work with people who are in aftercare. I actually had a client that I worked with who had it's a couple who had just experienced a stillbirth. So I helped them with some research about different ways of approaching the funeral and the cremation. And I helped them to find a tree for a tree burial. And I also lead ceremony and create and lead ceremony. So I do that as part of the process of saying farewell for family, for loved ones. During vigil, which is the time when a client is in the last stages of life, I sit with the client, soothing, comforting. I use essential oils. We might talk about just some concerns and anxieties that the client has and just listen the key issue with being a death doula is deep, active listening.
Mhm.
So I'm mostly holding space and listening through all of these stages. And I could help with a legacy project if
Mhm.
a client is interested in that. I can also, because I'm a writer, I do memoir writing as one of my offerings if anyone is interested. That's sort of a nutshell version.
Yeah,
Also,
that's
I'm trained in MAID, medical assistance in
okay.
dying. So I'm also prepared to walk that journey for dying with dignity if a client makes that choice.
Wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Sounds like a very well-rounded offering. And
Yes.
yes, yeah. It's so wonderful that you've taken that on and that you've got that background of writing and the things that you can bring, that your whole life kind of led to this place, it seems like.
It really did. It's really quite amazing to me when I think about it, actually. It's just like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. It's where it all led. Yeah.
It's so great.
So, what are the challenges that you find out in the world in your job as a helper?
Yeah. The biggest challenge is that most people don't know what a death doula is. They've never heard of it.
Yep.
If I say the words, they're like, what, huh? What is that? And trying to explain it is equally a challenge if they have no idea. And also if they don't want to talk about death. So I'm usually very sensitive to whether I even mention what I'm doing. But some people are open, and I try to educate and just inform and talk a little bit about, what's happening in the movement, because it is a movement now. So that's the biggest challenge. And if people don't know what a death doula is, how do they know how to look for one if they need one, or if they would be open to it? So the challenge is educating, communicating, bringing communities a practice of different practices and different entities like hospices and hospitals and cities, city councils, and all kinds of entities need to be educated and informed so that we have a place in the structure sort of the death space. So that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a very common one that we hear about too. It's like just we're doing our death service and we're educating as we're moving along.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned so many important places, communities and spiritual communities probably, and hospice and doctors and nurses and all of these people that, as usual, the key is getting the word to the right ears,
Exactly.
That's the challenge. Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very important challenges. And so can you talk a little about what, kind of maybe what supports you with those challenges, but also just what kind of things you fall back on when you're feeling overwhelmed, or when it's just, it's a hard day, when you come home and you go,
Oh, I just rant at my husband.
Oh, you have a sounding board.
Yeah, he's a very great source of support.
Good. Yeah.
So after I was trained, I was sort of flailing about and, what's next? Like, how do I do this? And joining Threshold Choir was a huge resource and support. I just felt so connected to just that space of being with people who were working in the space of helping people at the end of life, even though it was just singing, but it's not what I do as a doula, but it was just one step. And in the Threshold Choir chapter that I attend in Los Angeles, I met Myra and Phoenix, my two doula sisters, who are now, we worked together and created a collaborative, and it is the biggest source of support and resource that I now have. I think there are about at least 10 of us now. We are just about to launch our website, and we share all kinds of resources. We're constantly shooting each other information about workshops, about training. We meet regularly. We work together to create some SMPs for the collaborative, and we're just really growing and developing sort of a system and a resource for each other, and to go out, like we were just saying, to go out into the world and try to start bridging some of those gaps that exist in the societal connections that need to be there to support our work. We just met with an amazing individual, Dr. Arash, who is really like spearheading some of that work. He met with us to talk about how we can foster some of those relationships. He wants to create a space for doulas in all hospices. He wants city councils to help with advertising and representation and education. And we're actually going to be trying to connect with the LGBTQIA Center in West Hollywood to try to help them, because we're really interested in looking at underserved communities and how we can be of service to them. So this resource of our collaborative is, I have to say, is really the strongest support and system of connections that I have had myself personally. Other than that, you know, when we did the INELDA training, we were taught about self-care. And I personally have I actually developed a little system of self-care for myself, which I just returned from. I go every year in the fall to Rochester, New York, where I grew up, and I rent a house on the lake with picture windows overlooking the lake. And I take long walks, and I just look at it as a period of nurturing and self-care and reflection and meditation. And I'm working a little bit at the same time. I'm still teaching a class, and I do some of these workshops and training. I did Chris Dingman does a sound bath grief transformation series that I attended while I was in Rochester this time, which was just so healing and wonderful. So I use that time. I have to get away. I go on my own without my husband. It's just my alone time for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And it's very, very supportive and helpful to my practice.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I do too. I love that. And I also really am just tickled that we interviewed Myra and Phoenix,
And
right?
Phoenix,
Yes, we did.
And they said the exact same comment about being resourced, finding resources within the group, that you all really help each other quite a bit, which we don't hear that often, especially, and I'm going to say this, like, this is an activist kind of group, right? We're trying to get out there, educating, demonstrating, modeling, and it takes a lot of effort. And the fact that you have all collaboratively found each other and support each other, that is so key to some of the big lifting that a lot of groups need to do. And it sounds like you did it.
Yeah, it's really
absolutely.
amazing. It's really happening. It's an amazing group of individuals. Just wonderful.
So, Karen, what frightens you about the end of life?
Well, even though I've had a really full life, I guess my biggest fear is just being cut off before I do enough or live enough or read enough or, learn enough. It's just, I'm so hungry for, I have a very strong life instinct. So I think that challenge of, just letting go and being with what is, and that's sort of my fear, is that I won't be able to do that. I won't be ready to do it. I'll be too greedy. I'll have too many unfinished, situations that I need to take care of. So all of that is probably my fear. And then I've always had this fear because I watched my great grandmother, who was from Italy, very lonely and bitter at the end of her life. I just always had this fear of dying alone in a nursing home without anyone with me to support me. So it's just kind of a nagging thing in the back of my head all the time.
Yeah.
Well, so do you mind if we talk about that?
Not at all.
So that's a fear. And I presume that you have your advanced care directive plan.
I do.
And so is that written in somewhere? Is that fear? Is that, like, knowing this fear, have you found the language to make a plan to support you, just in case?
I don't have like a complicated, detailed plan like that says, this is the kind of support that I want at that time. No, it's not.
And I only asked you that because yesterday we interviewed somebody else, and I really appreciated, like, I have, who can be in the space, who cannot be. My sister had the music she wanted playing as she's passing. And, knowing that we want something to happen, we can say, I would hope that we could have, as, community and singers and chaplains. Like, we assume that, but we should write it in, right?
Oh, yeah,
like
absolutely.
So that's the only reason. It's so fresh in my mind from yesterday's conversation
Yes.
about really give it like this breath of life around, giving permission to people to stay if they want for the entire time. You want to stay, you stay, because I would welcome the company.
Yeah, yeah.
And others may not feel the same way, but I love that is something that you've thought about, and just curious, how we could frame that into your plan.
Yeah, I mean, I have written my vigil plan. We did it as part of our training in Anelda.
Oh, good.
But I think everybody needs to have one and go back and constantly revise it.
Right.
Because it changes, like who you'd want there and who you don't want there. And yeah, this fear is more about like, I won't have any choice. I'll have to be in a nursing home or, incapacitated, that kind of thing. But for my vigil plan itself, like when I'm dying, wherever it is, I pretty much do have that. I have the music.
Yeah, of course you
do. The candles.
The essential oils.
Yes, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I do a class called Before You Go, End of Life Planning, and it's a long 2-hour class of all the little details. And one of the things we go through is, what exactly, as much as specific as possible do you want to have happen? And one of the things the person yesterday said was, not only who do you want, you not only want to give people permission to be there, but you also want to give them permission to leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
What a concept. And then we've also heard actually from Tiana when she talked about the LGBTQ people, that's where that kind of, who do you not want to have there?
Right.
Because some people may not honor your agency or your choice about your identity, and you probably don't want them to be there causing trouble, right?
That's
so there's
right.
there's a lot of things people tend to just sort of, we write up, okay, but like you said, going back and looking at it again on a regular basis, you can start going, oh yeah, maybe it would be good to have a little more specifics about this is really how I want to be. If I am in a nursing home, I hope people, here's a list of people you should call and tell them to come visit,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Those long haul sitters.
That's right.
Because some of us are I have to say my dad is a really good sitter. He'll just hunker down with his newspaper and just sit. And I've seen people get like fidgety and want to leave.
Right.
Like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love this.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wish we would have asked you about?
I can't think of anything. I mean, you guys really seem to have covered it. Maybe just how my background in meditation helps with my fear of death. Because just personally, I think it really informs my practice as a doula and my attitudes towards death. And the Tibetan Book of Living Dying was sort of an introduction to me of those end stages.
Yeah.
I mean, they really nailed it in terms of understanding what happens with the body and the mind and the spirit. And I guess I have this story of, another sort of lead into what I ended up doing, which is that my very first day of meditation instruction, way back in the early 90s, I sat on the cushion in my first training, and the teacher was sort of very secular informed and Native American practices. And he said, you're going to take your posture, and your seat is on the cushion, and your back is straight, and your heart is open and soft, so soft that if a butterfly landed on it, it would hurt. And you're sitting there straight, holding yourself erect, like Sitting Bull on the top of the mountain, who says, today is a good day to die.
Wow.
And I've carried that with me for all of these years. And I think it's how I deal with that fear that I have of not being able to let go and, didn't do enough, all of that frenzy about staying alive and being in the world and not wanting to face death.
Yeah.
So I make it a daily practice, and it just really informs how I approach this work.
Yeah. Good. That's a really, really good, excellent addition to what we talked about ways to support yourself. Yeah. And I mean, people have different practices, but we always like to ask that question because we hear so many good ideas, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. I love that vision of sitting on the mountaintop and saying, today is a good day to die. Also a good day to live.
Exactly. Because that's what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. A good day to be.
So,
yes.
Well, thank you. This has been great. You did send us a quote. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes. So this is a poem by Heidi Preet.
Okay, yeah.
To love someone long-term is to attend 1,000 funerals of the people they used to be, the people they're too exhausted to be any longer, the people they don't recognize inside themselves anymore, the people they grew out of, the people they never ended up growing into. We so badly want the people we love to get their spark back when it burns out, to become speedily found when they are lost. But it is not our job to hold anyone accountable to be the people they used to be. It is our job to travel with them between each version and to honor what emerges along the way. Sometimes it will be an even more luminescent flame. Sometimes it will be a flicker that disappears and temporarily floods the room with a perfect and necessary darkness.
So good. So beautiful words. Thank you.
Yeah. So needed to hear. I know. The people, they're too exhausted to be any longer. I can totally identify with that right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Yeah, I love that too, that it's not our job to hold anyone accountable to be the people they used to be. It's our job to travel with them between each version to honor what emerges along the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that comes up a lot. That's why I chose this. So it resonates so much with the dying, what happens, and what we expect from people and what we sort of want or demand. And it's not in the cards. It's just like, let them be.
Yeah. Be with them where they are. Yeah.
Right.
Poignant. Yeah. Very poignant. Yes. And I really appreciate your work and your presence. And I'm just so happy to hear there's so many people doing this, people like yourself and the cooperatives that you talked about and all the other people we've met that are just really out there. Like you said, this movement of trying to normalize this conversation and get people to really realize how important it is to think about this stuff and to talk about it and to be in love with it.
Yeah. And the two of you, I am so grateful for you and what you're doing to contribute to that whole process, the project of educating and spreading the word and bringing out just these, different people that are working that we would not know about otherwise. It's just really wonderful. I'm really grateful for you.
I'm so grateful for all these human beings in this in service to death and dying.
Yeah. So spread the word.
Yes.
Tell everybody you know.
That's right.
Death is coming. Death is coming.
Everybody.
Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call?
Oh, yes, I know.
Thanks so much for joining us on the End of Life Conversations. We appreciate you and look forward to sharing our stories. We encourage you to subscribe to have access to premium episodes and extra resources. Links to our guests and their recommendations and a transcript of this episode will be in the podcast notes.
Yes, thank you so much. And please tell all your friends. Follow us on social media, and again, consider subscribing for some excellent premium content. We want to acknowledge that the music we are using was composed and produced by Charles Heastand. We also want to acknowledge that we live on unceded lands that have been cared for thousands of years by Indigenous peoples who are still here.